Hello and welcome to Wising Arts Centre's Studio Artist Live, our programme for young creatives. So every day this week from the 1st to the 5th of March, we're going to be live streaming here on YouTube at 3 and 5 p.m. And don't worry if you don't get a chance to watch the sessions live. We'll also be recording them and you can catch them over at the wisingbroadcast.art platform after. So the session will be a chance to get to know the artists, find out how they work, as well as each artist providing a different creative prompt for you to try at home. So please do feel free to log in and ask questions in the chat here on YouTube as we go along. We'd love to hear what you think, whether it's a comment or a question. We've already received a couple of things via social media, and so we'll ask these and any other questions that come up during the session at the end of the conversation. So we're looking forward to having you all here today and working with one of our studio artists today, Damaris Athene. Welcome, Damaris.
Thank you, Lucy. So yeah, I'm going to share with you today a bit about how I ended up being at Wising and also about my studio practice and some of the ideas and materials that I use within that. So I studied at Camberwell College of Art, which is in London, and I graduated back in 2015 now. And I ended up getting a great job working full-time as a painting assistant for Science, which is Damien Hirst's company. So I was working full-time painting there before moving to Cambridge at the end of a year. And then I got involved with Circuit, which you might, if you saw Naomi's stream yesterday, you would have seen that she was also part of Circuit. So through that, we were both part of Circuit Conductors, which was a training program where we learned how to run artist workshops. So it was a great opportunity to be able to combine my practice with also doing something that would earn me money. So I then went on to do a lot of artist workshops for both Wising and also Kettle's Yard. And now I do a combination of that, but I also work at Wising as well as having a studio here. So I'm the live-in housekeeper and caretaker. So I live in a little flat attached to the farmhouse, and I've had a studio here since 2018 now. So that's a little bit of background about how I got here. But my practice is all to do with the effects of the digital world on our relationships with our own body and with others as well. And like how that changes how we interact with others and how we interact with our own bodies. So I'm really interested in this from a specifically female perspective. So, for example, I'm interested in how there are lots of Snapchat filters and different ways that we can edit what we look like online. So whether that be just taking a selfie that you send to a friend, or whether that be, you know, actually seriously considering wanting to change your appearance and experimenting with that in a digital way. And I'm interested in how this is now moving into the physical, things like people, maybe they're wanting to physically alter how they look and they would go to a plastic surgeon with a digitally edited photo of themselves, whereas before they would have gone with, say, a photo of the hottest celebrity of that time. So I'm interested in how this is changing over time. And also how the sort of flattening and perfecting that happens in the digital. So a lot of the images that we see in the digital are very glossy, very smooth, there's no imperfection, but that's not real life. It's not like that. But yet we're starting to see that come into things in the physical world. So whether that be with design, how objects are made, or how we think of ourselves as well. We're trying to become these perfect smooth things that we can never be, because, you know, humans are lumpy and bumpy and not perfect at all. So yeah, what else was I going to say? It's so easy to alter your appearance now, as I was saying, with the filters and the stuff that you can do. So yeah, I'm interested in exploring that. So let me show you a bit of how I do that. So here are some of my works that I've developed, and I still call them paintings, even though they're very 3D. So they're made with MDF foam, padding, and neoprene, which is a material you might have come across if you've ever worn a wetsuit. It's a very, very strange manufactured, unnatural material that has a lot of structure to it, as well as being quite stretchy and quite bendy. And this type of neoprene is actually even more flexible than the stuff you would find with a wetsuit. And here, as you can see, these are completely abstract shapes, but I'm still wanting to evoke a sense of the body with them. So you can see underneath that there are strange things sort of poking out and bulging from underneath. They're disrupting this very smooth and glossy surface, and you're not really sure what they are. And you might even find them a bit sort of repulsive and disgusting. And I'm interested in that contrast between the beauty and then the repulsion as well, and this idea of the grotesque. So you'll see that these have been coloured. So I use an airbrush to paint on the top. So that basically blows air through a very small hole with a needle, acrylic paint, and then you get this very, very fine, smooth effect. And you can't really tell that it's been done by a hand, whereas with a brush you'd see sort of a big line or a big brush stroke. So this is giving this smooth airbrushed effect, much like airbrushing of photos that you will have heard about with, you know, celebrities and magazines that have their photos airbrushed to make them look better. So in a similar way, I'm using this technique on these neoprene padded paintings. So we can have a bit of a closer look. This one. So you can see here, and it's a bit hard to tell whether this is a digital object, whether this is a physical object. And I'm interested with playing around with that. You're not really sure what's what. Sorry about that. Here are some other ones. You can see, especially with this one. So really thinking about sort of digital colors and sort of almost that sort of vibration you get while looking at a screen. So another reason why it's important to me that these are viewed as paintings rather than sculptures is to link into the history of painting. So I'm sure you'll be familiar with the many, many paintings that have been made by predominantly white male artists of nude female figures. And I wanted to link back to this history, sort of always seeing women as objects and something beautiful to look at, but, you know, turning it on its head by these not being recognizable pictures of women at all. So a recent development of my practice has been to then stage performative acts, as I like to think of them, with these sculptural paintings. So you can see here, this was actually very recent. This was maybe 2 or so weeks ago when we had this sort of first batch of snow that we had. And here at Wysing, we actually got a really good thick layer of it. And I went out and took some photos in the snow. I was interested in the snow sort of being like the equivalent, the nature's equivalent of a Snapchat filter or an Instagram filter, sort of covering and perfecting everything and making the landscape look very idyllic and sort of soft and beautified. But it also has a really nice quality of light when you have the ground covered with snow. So I was also interested in that and how these objects change when you have a human body interacting with them. So this was me holding them in different ways. You can see that a bit closer.
Thank you, Damaris. They're almost, looking at them, they're almost like sort of physical filters, aren't they? Or you're using them in some ways to sort of disguise your body or sort of wear them as well.
Yeah, and I'm interested in how, yeah, they almost look like they could have been photoshopped in, but they're not. They're real physical things, and sort of playing with this boundary between where does the digital end and where does the physical start. I mean, we're so connected to our phones nowadays. You know, I'd never have 5 minutes without having it by my side. And how does that affect our day-to-day lives by having such a sort of integrated life with the digital? So I'm currently working on a series of miniatures. So these are some smaller versions, but I will be making, you can see the sizes here at the bottom. Currently making some even smaller ones. If you look here, I don't know whether you can see it in my little screen in the corner, some really little ones, because I've got some miniature exhibitions coming up. So there's some really interesting ideas by two artists who are also curators. So one is an old dresser, which is a type of open cabinet normally used for storing plates. So she's converted that into an exhibition space. And then also another artist and curator, she has converted a doll's house into an exhibition space. So I'm excited for this because I've really wanted to do installations for a long time. And this is going to give me an opportunity to try things out on a much smaller scale and in a much more sort of cost realistic way. So I'm going to be making some wallpaper for the walls, and that's going to be made with a combination of my photos, the ones I just showed you, and also some distorted images and edited images of the padded paintings. So for example, like these ones here, I'll go into an editing program and I might sort of pull out bits of it. So to distort the shape, change the color, maybe cut bits up and then sort of stick them back together like a digital collage, really. And that will be the wallpaper. And then there will be miniature padded paintings on top of that as well. And also some photorealistic paintings of the padded paintings, which are then photographed and then made back into padded paintings, which may sound a bit confusing, but it will make a bit more sense when you see it. But sort of thinking about how on the internet, we're constantly recycling and regurgitating imagery. So in a quite mundane way, it might be sort of a meme that you've seen 5 different times, but each time someone's doing something different to it and it's being distorted and it's being changed. So I'm interested in doing that to my paintings itself, so that when you get into the exhibition, you're not really sure which the original is anymore, because you've seen it go through so many different iterations.
Interesting that, Damaris, the link between kind of digital and physical. Like, is it important for you that you physically make something as well as use digital elements with it? Because someone watching this might think, I want to be a digital artist, do I just have to do that? It's interesting that your work combines both.
Yeah, I'm really interested in trying to make something physical that looks really digital and playing with those boundaries. I think there's something something that's really interesting that can happen is when you sort of inhabit the space between things. So like how these aren't completely paintings, they aren't completely sculptures. It's kind of sitting between that. They look very digital, but they're still very much physical things. So yeah, playing with that tension. So I was just gonna add that also, as well as my practice, I run a blog. So this is somewhere where I interview different female artists about their own practice. And that's something that's really important to me because, as I'm sure many of you have seen, it's for the most part male artists who have the most fame and in the biggest exhibitions. And it's something I really noticed at art school. There were far more women on the course, but yeah, when I was going to exhibitions in and around London, they were predominantly male artists. So this is just sort of my small part in doing something to address that balance. So that's something you can look up. I think there'll be a link to it in the chat. But I also wanted to share with you, quickly stop that one, some of my inspirations. So these are artists who've been really crucial to my development as an artist. So Rachel de Jude, or de Jude, I should say, she's Dutch. So she was an artist that I saw in a group exhibition a few years ago. And I'm sure you'll see the visual similarities between our works. But I was really interested in the flatness of her work, which maybe isn't as easy to see from these photos as it is when you're there in real life. But you can see here, so these are images that she's taken. So whether it be skin or with some of the other ones, it's like different materials. So maybe clay or plasticine or something like that, or paint. She's taken very close up macro photos of it and then printed onto sometimes aluminium for the most part. So you're getting these sculptural objects that are very flat, sort of playing with this digital physical thing, sort of, that tension between the physical and the digital, which I found really interesting. And you can see in this one, these are actually real hands that are poking out of the wall. So that was a performance element to her work. So thinking about how then the actual human body coming back into it, how that works. And another artist who recently graduated from the Royal College of Art, which is a university in London. So this is where I got this padding idea from. I saw her work, and you can see here as well, she's got things that are poking up from underneath. And another artist would have to be Carla Black. So Carla Black's a Scottish artist. And she does these absolutely incredible installations that, as you can see, they're made from very unconventional materials. So this may be cellophane. She often used a lot of cosmetic products and makeup. I think this is gold leaf, these bits around here. And I think that's sort of tulle type of netting you might have seen in ballet outfits. But what really draws me to her work is the fact that it's so powerful, but yet she's using these very soft colors and very soft materials. And it's very fragile. But actually, for me, that's what its power comes from. There's such a fragile thing, but it's so powerful, and it's so enormous as well. She's really not afraid to take up space, which isn't something that you see as often with a female artist as you do with a male.
Thank you, Damaris. It's really great to see all the different artists, and know that as an artist yourself, you're still looking out to other artists, as well as those ideas around kind of body image as well, to actually generate ideas for your work. And I wondered if you, as an artist, if you had any tips for a young artist who might be watching this, about either how to be an artist and also kind of how you fold in those different areas of your work together.
So for me, a lot of inspiration comes from going to exhibitions. Obviously, that's not something that we can do in person right now, but there are a lot of online exhibitions that you can look at. Also reading as well, and also my peers, and sort of having conversations with people I know. So there might be someone that you are friends with who's also really into art that you could talk to about art. And I think it's a mixture of all these things. Often I find I get the most inspiration actually from things that I really don't like. And it's because I'm trying to figure out, why is it that I don't like that? And that gives me an idea for something.
Brilliant. Thank you, Damaris. And I think it's also really interesting to hear how you kind of got into working as an artist as well, and knowing that even though you've got a studio at Wising, you're still involved with Wising in different ways as well. So having a job here, sort of looking after the site as well. That's great to hear. So to sort of close things off, did you have a creative prompt?
I do, yes. So what I thought could be an interesting thing to do would be to think about sort of distorting your body, but rather than doing it on the apps like we're so used to, actually do it physically in real life. So to do this, you can find props around the house. So I've got a glass of water here. And as you can see already, just how my arm is changing through the water, you can really distort yourself. So you can see here. So my face is really distorted, and depending on how far away you go and how close you go, you can get some really cool effects. So kind of like the effects you might get on photo booth or something like that, but you can recreate them in real life. And so you might want to then take some photos yourself. You could maybe prop up your camera and put it on a timer, or you could ask someone to photograph you. But also you could try and find a mirror. I would recommend using one that's smaller than this because it's quite heavy, but you can sort of start to see sort of different effects you could get. And if you can get multiple mirrors, then you can start to get some really cool things happening, and almost like a kaleidoscope effect. So once you've had an exploration, you might want to review your photos that you've taken, and then you could start digitally manipulating them again. So taking them through another process of translation. So a program that I would recommend is called GIMP, G-I-M-P. And that's basically a free version of Photoshop. So you don't need to pay anything to download it. And you can do, if anyone's used Photoshop before, you can have things called layers. So then you can start adding multiple layers of distortion upon your photo, and you can have a play around and carry on going. Really, there's no end point.
Great. Thank you, Damaris. I think it's sort of refreshing to hear, how you can continue to use sort of distortion techniques even if you're not using your phone or a sort of digital tool in any way, or how the two can link together and enable you to maybe be sort of more playful with things as well. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Damaris, for chatting to us today. And thanks to everyone for listening. Just as a reminder, we are running Wising Studio Artists Lives every day this week. So that's from the 1st to the 5th of March at 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. So later on today, we're going to be chatting to Sahela Sokonvari, doing some egg tempura paintings. And if you don't manage to catch all the broadcasts, then you can head over to wisingbroadcast.art. And from there, you'll be able to head over to the Studio Artists Live page and see all the past recordings, find out more about all the studio artists involved in the programme there. So thank you, Damaris, for taking part today, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll hope to see you again soon.